Perfect. Thank you so much, Caitlin. Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome. We're excited that you joined us for our presentation today on uniting advancement of diversity, equity, and inclusion with leadership development. So we'll just start off here introducing ourselves and a little bit about who we are and our role at the college. I'm Lyle Wielenga. I'm a third-year veterinary student from Northwest Iowa, and I'm interested in going into production or mixed animal practice back home upon graduation. And I'll turn it over to Erica.
Hi, everyone. My name is Erica. I'm a VM2 from Mission Viejo, California. And my interests are all over the place. I'm interested in pathology, zoo medicine, small animal medicine, really just veterinary medicine in general. And I'll pass it over to Lisa.
Hello, I'm Lisa Sebring. I'm the administrative assistant to Dean Grooms. I've been here at the College of Veterinary Medicine for 15 years, and I've really enjoyed working with our students. This is our second group of Dean's interns and learning more about diversity, equity, and inclusion. Dr. Grooms?
Thanks, Lisa, and good afternoon, everybody. And once again, thank you for joining us today. My name is Dan Grooms, and I'm the Stephen G. Julesgaard Dean of Veterinary Medicine here in the College of Veterinary Medicine. Been in this role for just over 2 years and just having absolutely great time here at Iowa State University. So I'm going to pass it back over to Lyle to kind of introduce what we're going to talk about today.
Thanks, everybody. So just kind of as an outline for what our plan for today, we're planning to discuss an overview of the Dean's Summer Internship to kind of give you some background on that. And then we'll also cover 2 of the major projects that Eric and I and the team here worked on this past summer in detail. And then we'll finish up with a discussion of some of the outcomes from this summer, as well as some of our personal takeaways. And with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Rooms to give us an overview of the internship.
Thanks, Lyle. So to begin with, what I want to do is just describe the Dean's Summer Leadership Internship. So this is a program that I initiated the first summer that I was here with a couple focuses. And if we go to the next slide, Lisa, really there were 2 objectives of this internship. The first one is importantly was to develop leadership skills within our students, develop leaders that could impact the future of the veterinary profession. So that was really the first objective. And then the second objective was also to work on projects that would help, that were important both to the college as well as the veterinarian profession, I should say. So these are projects that could help advance our college in specific ways, but also advance the veterinary profession. So if I go to the next slide, the format of this internship takes on several kind of different aspects. The first thing that we work on to the summer is really just a group of kind of intentional leadership development activities. And really these intentional development activities centered around 4 different things. The first thing is that our students that are involved in this program attend what's called the Veterinary Leadership Experience. This is a 1-week intensive leadership program for veterinary students as well as other young leaders within our profession. And so our students typically attend this. Unfortunately, Lyle and Erica were unable to attend that this summer because of the pandemic, but we substituted in other activities to kind of to take the place of this experience. We also meet weekly in a journal club to talk about a variety of different leadership topics, and we rotate amongst our group who takes on that leadership of that journal club experience. We also schedule time with leaders from around the college, from around Iowa State University, and also from around the local community to visit with us over lunch and really talk about their leadership journey and their philosophy about leadership and any other things that they want to share with our students about leadership. And then importantly, the summer leadership interns get a chance to engage with our college leadership here in a variety of different ways, whether it's through meetings or other experiences. But again, the idea there is that they get to learn about leadership from folks that are actually practicing it on a day-to-day basis. If you go to the next slide, Lisa. So the other part of the summer leadership internship is that we engage in a project, as I mentioned that advances both the college and the veterinary profession. And so this last summer was the second year of this project. In 2019, the project that we worked on was looking at and trying to come up with ways to impact the shortage of veterinarians that are located in rural areas, not only within Iowa, but also across the country. And then this past summer's project, which you're going to hear more about today from Lyle and Erica, was really to work on diversity, equity, and inclusion within the college. So this summer project is, again, meant to do something that's impactful to the college and veterinary profession. But the real kind of crux to that project is for our students to be engaged in a project where they can actually sharpen and develop their leadership skills. This is a 12-week summer project. It's open to second and third year rising professional students. And it is a paid internship. And just to point out the importance of philanthropy, this project, or this summer internship, is supported by the Dr. Stephen G. Julesgaard Endowment. So just another great example of how philanthropy helps us to advance our missions here at the university. So I mentioned this last year, or this last summer, was our second year for the project, and by the way, we have already selected students for this coming summer. But it's important for me that when we do this is that we actually have outcomes. So our goal is to actually have something useful at the end of the summer that helps us to move forward. So I just want to point out, in 2019, I mentioned that we worked on rural veterinary medicine shortage here in Iowa. And one of the outcomes that came out of that was that the state of Iowa actually created a veterinary loan repayment program to help support student debt of graduating veterinary students that went back into rural areas within the state of Iowa. That project was worked on, by the way, by the two young ladies here in the picture, Laura Pizzell and Kelsey Deaver. So that was a very concrete outcome from that summer program. And then, as I mentioned, this summer, we worked on diversity, equity, and inclusion here within the College of Veterinary Medicine. And what you're going to learn about now from Lyle and Erica is some of the outcomes of that program from this past summer. So with that, I think I'm going to turn it over to Erica to start talking about what we did this summer. So Erica, you're up.
Awesome. Thank you, Dean Grooms. So like Dr. Grooms mentioned, our initiative for this past summer was to help improve diversity, equity, and inclusion within the College of Vet Med. And we chose this initiative because we really believe that the value in understanding and celebrating each other's differences, and that not only is it important to those within the veterinary college, the veterinary profession, but it should also be a priority throughout Iowa State University and the community that surrounds us as well. We recognize that the veterinary profession is painfully lacking diversity and has historically been a profession consisting of primarily white males. And although the demographic has really shifted in the profession to be more predominantly female, we're still striving to make veterinary medicine a more diverse and inclusive profession for everyone. We'll go on to the next slide. So although the majority of our presentation today is really going to be focused on two of our main projects, which is the first year veterinary student program and our lengthy application review data analysis, we're also proud of many other projects that we were able to work on throughout the duration of the summer. So a couple of things that we worked on as well were we reviewed and suggested edits for the college's diversity, equity, and inclusion website to make it more user-friendly and promote it a little bit as well. We also changed the college's diversity, equity, and inclusion mission statement and tweaked some committee charges throughout the college to include initiatives surrounding diversity and inclusion within their objectives as well. And also altering our main College of Vet Med's mission, vision, and value statements to really infuse diversity and inclusion within them as well. With the help of the college's Committee for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, we also helped organize our very first day of school kickoff event, hosting Dr. Keisha Scott in the fall and Dr. Jean Tan in the spring. So with these events, we really wanted to get the whole ISU, CVM community thinking about what we can all do as individuals and a profession to really incite change when it comes to being a more diverse and inclusive profession. So Dr. Scott's presentation explored the idea of isms such as racism and sexism and how we can really play a role to combat this within our profession and within our communities as well by taking affirmative action and really keeping ourselves and others around us accountable. Dr. Tan's presentation from this past spring focused more on her personal story navigating through veterinary medicine as a now board certified equine vet from not only an underrepresented background within vet med in general, but in an avenue of veterinary medicine that is made up of primarily white practitioners in the equine realm. Like Dr. Grooms mentioned, because we couldn't go to the leadership training in the summer due to the pandemic, we were also a part of a cohort including 39 other members of the college's community that completed the Purdue Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Certificate Program. So this module went through educational trainings that held weekly discussions on topics that we learned about that week, such as microaggressions, the LGBTQ+ community, persons with disabilities, affirmative leadership, and many more. And we were able to learn and educate ourselves about the various clientele that we serve and make us really think outside of our own perspective. And finally, like Dean Grooms had mentioned, we engage with veterinary leadership throughout the state of Iowa, as well as the Iowa Veterinary Medical Association, or the IVMA, on the importance of diversity and inclusion within our profession, which also resulted in a DEI task force being formed to further advance that within the Iowa veterinary community. So on the next slide, like I'd mentioned, one of the larger projects that we worked on was implementing a training program on the imperativeness of promoting diversity and inclusion within our profession, which was required for all first-year veterinary students to take prior to getting started here at the college. So the first-year veterinary students, who from here on out, we'll just refer to them as VM1 students, they all went through online training module called Everfi's Diversity and Inclusion Training. This was followed up with 2 one-hour small group discussions, and then at the end they submitted a reflection piece on what they took away from that. So on the next slide, we'll talk a little bit more about the Everfi module itself. So like I said, it was focused on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And this training really discusses systemic inequities in an enduring way and really helps students understand that, you know, the words diversity and inclusion aren't necessarily politically charged, but extremely crucial in the world that we live in today, and especially within the veterinary profession. So in the module, the students read through educational material, they partook in interactive video scenarios, and learned things as simple as the definition of oppression, privilege, identity, or even just the difference between equity and equality. So with this training, we really wanted to equip students with tools to be inclusive as students, but also out in the world of veterinary medicine. As we gathered feedback from this experience, the same training was then open to all students, staff, and faculty, as well as all student leadership here at the College of Veterinary Medicine over the winter holiday break. And those individuals went through this training, were also able to participate in small group discussions. And I'm so proud of the amount of people who went through this training and really participated in this. It was really great to see the whole college community coming together and doing this. So on the next slide, we'll talk a little bit more about the small group discussions that the VM1 students went through. So like I mentioned before, the cohort that is also partaking in the Purdue certificate program and numerous others within the college's community volunteered their time to facilitate discussions with first-year students to unpack really everything that they learned from this training. So each moderator had about 4 to 5 students in their group and facilitated 2 discussions that were about an hour. So the first discussion we held all together during their freshman orientation in August. And we had everyone introduce themselves, share their backgrounds, and allow for everyone to really celebrate each other's differences and to better get to know each other. The second session, we compiled a pretty lengthy list of real-life scenarios from real veterinarians, veterinary students, veterinary technicians, from times where they recalled situations that weren't necessarily inclusive, whether people were sexist, racist, xenophobic, homophobic, etc., what have you. And so we've included an example of a shorter scenario that was submitted here up on the screen for you all to look over. But while we knew that we were dealing with real life scenarios, we also wanted to ensure that, we had guidelines in place to ensure that these discussion groups were held in a safe space of mutual respect and learning. And although we really hit important concepts and ideas throughout these discussions, that we acknowledge that everyone, is kind of in a different stage in the learning process, and that we all needed to be respectful and really learn from each other's point of view. Our aim was that with this discussion, we can bring to the students' attention that regardless of what your background is, situations like this can happen to you, a coworker, someone even outside of practice, and really had everyone discuss, what they could apply from this training module to this particular situation, or, if this was you in that situation, how would you have handled it? So the Everfi training, we really helped to equip students to be able to respond and speak up in these types of scenarios instead of being complicit and allowing that behavior to happen. So once the students finished their second discussion, they also submitted a reflection piece on what they had learned and what they'll do to incite positive change during their time here at the college and out in practice. So we're extremely proud of implementing this project to the VM1 curriculum, but we also know that this training was really just a starting point. We want to continue to infuse the entire ISU College of Vet Med student experience with ways for students to educate themselves about issues surrounding diversity and inclusion throughout their entire 4 years at the college. And we know that this module is a first step in that direction. So now I'll pass it over to Lisa, who will talk about the data that was collected from those who participated in the program.
Thank you, Erica. Following the training, surveys were sent to participants to determine the importance of the training. We had 221 students participate in the Everfi training. That included the first-year veterinary students, the biomedical sciences one-year master's students, and our student leaders. In addition, our 22 facilitators included faculty, staff, and students, several that were participating in the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Certification Program. Following the online training, the students completed a survey sharing what they had learned. Overall, there was positive feedback on the learner satisfaction review of the course. They found the course engaging, easy to use and understand, as well as finding the course information important. In addition to the learner satisfaction, the course content review provided positive feedback on their continued interest, knowledge, openness to have discussions with other students, and to interact with others. They also felt they were more prepared to engage in ally behavior and communicating with others. In the small groups from both the first-year students and the student leaders, the students shared that they learned about creating an inclusive environment, improving interactions with others at the college and university, and that the training showed how the college prioritizes inclusivity and wants to make it available to all of our students for use in their day-to-day interactions. The facilitators also shared important feedback from making connections with the first-year students to their own learning opportunities and sharing real-life experiences with our students. Now I'll turn it over to Lyle, and he'll give us information on the applicant analysis.
Thanks, Lisa. So one of the other major projects that we worked on this summer was going through 5 years of application to the ISU College of Veterinary Medicine. We had two major goals with this project. The first was to identify the undergraduate schools from where the majority of our underrepresented in veterinary medicine students are applying from, and gather contact information from these schools so that we can target recruitment to these schools and potential mentorship initiatives. The second goal was to analyze and identify potential barriers for applicants to ISU CVM who are underrepresented in the veterinary medical field, with the goal to develop strategies to reduce barriers as well as overcome these barriers. We looked at the application to ISU College of Veterinary Medicine for all students from the years 2015 through 2019. We looked at the group as a whole for some of the data we'll show you here, but we particularly focused on students from racial and ethnic minorities, as well as first-generation college students. On the next slide, this chart represents a breakdown of our applicants over the 5-year period that we analyzed. by racial and ethnic identity groups. To note, about 21.8% of our applicants in this study would be considered underrepresented in veterinary medicine, and 2.3% did not disclose their race or ethnicity. The next chart will represent the applicants by first generation college student status, with about 24% of our applicants over that period identifying as a first generation college student, and then about 1% not reporting. So now transitioning to our first goal of what schools do our underrepresented students in veterinary medicine apply from. So on the next slide, you'll see here, we identified a total of 32 schools where the majority of our underrepresented in veterinary medicine students are applying from. 4 of these schools highlighted in red are schools that we already have established relationships with, including our very own ISU undergraduate program. We identified an additional 28 schools that we didn't have established previous relationships with, and we gathered contact information from these schools, whether that be pre-vet club advisors, pre-vet clubs, animal science department chairs, etc. And we were able to get that contact information and provide it to our recruiter here at Iowa State College of Vet Med. And so that way we can target our recruitment to these schools as well as build a relationship with their pre-vet programs. We want students from the underrepresented backgrounds to know about the College of ISU, College of Veterinary Medicine, as well as our specific requirements. So that way when they do apply, they can be competitive applicants when they apply. On kind of transitioning to our other major goal with our analysis project was to identify potential barriers to applicants to ISU CVM who are from underrepresented in veterinary medicine. So we went through the last 5 years of applications looking at GPAs, primary, their undergraduate school, work experience, hours, and committee score with a focus on students from underrepresented backgrounds. As you can see on this slide, just to kind of get started, we looked at what makes the difference between our applicants who end up getting accepted versus not. What are some of the key factors? So we definitely found that GPA matters. So we found that students with higher GPAs, higher employment hours, as well as animal hours and research hours are more likely to get accepted to our College of Veterinary Medicine. As we, the animal hours important to get that hands-on experience prior to school, as well as holding a job down shows an important attribute for our applicants. One thing interesting that we did find is that having veterinary exposure is important on the application, but it doesn't really turn out to be much of a differentiator, as pretty much all of our applicants do have some form of veterinary experience. And I guess one note too with the research hours is that some students will get in, myself included in that, without having really any research hours, but we did definitely find correlation with those who were more likely to get accepted. A couple major differences here we found looking at underrepresented ethnic racial minorities versus white was we found lower GPA and less animal hours in our ethnic and racial minorities among our applicants. And then on this next slide here kind of shows kind of a graphical representation on that. On the left hand side here, we have a table showing the difference between those who got an offer and those who did not get an offer based on their science GPA. And they're pretty small numbers to read, but they are the actual GPA representation numbers. And then on the right-hand side, we have a graph showing the difference between our underrepresented applicants versus our white identified applicants, and showing a lower on average science GPA versus a higher among our white applicants. And then on the offer side, lower GPA with a no offer versus higher with an offer. And just to kind of note, there's I think it's about a 0.6 difference between the offer and no to offer versus, I think it was about 0.06 or something like that between the underrepresented white. So a smaller value percentage, but still statistically different. And then on the next page, we have looking at animal hours, same kind of thing with the graph on the left being our total number of applicants for offer versus no offer. And then the right-hand side being between white and underrepresented in veterinary medicine by race and ethnicity. One thing to note about this score is it's a scaled logarithmic score and not an actual value. So, I mean, they didn't have two animal hours. It's a logarithmic scale. But we did find some statistical difference there. One thing to note, we didn't find much difference in the veterinary hours as we previously mentioned. So then turning to our first generation college students, we found that there was a difference we found on average a lower GPA as well as lower research hours among first generation versus non-first generation college students. So then the next slide shows a similar graphical scale representing that. Similarly to before, we have on the left-hand side our offer versus no offer, with on average those who got an offer had a higher science GPA. I guess one thing I should note with the science GPA at the College of Veterinary Medicine for application, we look at science GPA, last 45 credit, as well as their cumulative GPA. However, we really didn't, they pretty much all correlated with each other. So we just showed you one graph here of the science GPA, so that way you didn't have to look at, we found pretty much the same thing with the science GPA as the cumulative and last 45. So we didn't want to bother showing you the same graph 3 times pretty much. And then, so then also on the research hours, we have a similar situation, offer versus no offer on the left-hand side, a higher number of research hours on average for those who got an offer. And then on the right-hand side, first generation college students, those who were first generation on average had lower number of research hours versus higher research versus on the those who were not first generation had a higher percentage of research hours. So kind of to summarize, grades seem to be our biggest barrier for all students from underrepresented in veterinary medicine. Animal exposure appeared to be a barrier for students from non-white ethnic backgrounds. And then we also identified that a lack of research exposure for first generation college students can be a barrier. So now what we found these different analysis of different potential barriers. So now is a challenging part since we identified these barriers. What do we do to overcome them? For grades, potential ideas for how to overcome these would be partnering with undergraduate programs for grades to find resources and mentorship needed to support students from underrepresented backgrounds to increase GPAs, whether it be through mentorship programs or tutoring or what that might look like. Another option is modifying how much weight is put on the application process towards GPA versus animal experience hours, etc. And then for animal exposure, I think one great option that we have here at ISU is the ISU Summer Veterinary Medicine Experience Program, where undergraduate students from Iowa State, those from underrepresented backgrounds, can apply for a 10-week internship exploring veterinary medicine. It's really a great opportunity to get those animal hours and get that experience in veterinary medicine and that exposure. And we're really excited to see where that continues here at ISU. And for research hours, how do we possibly create a mentorship program, specifically trying to encourage first generation college students who might not, be as familiar with research potentially, and how do we get them interested and be aware of those opportunities? So with that, I'm going to transition to just some of our main takeaways here for the summer overall. For myself, one big takeaway was being open and hearing from others' perspectives and learning from different cultures, whether that be going through our meetings with other leaders this summer, and as well as going as one of the facilitators for the VM1 diversity and inclusion discussion. Great experience. And as a result of that, I'm also taking the Spanish for Veterinarians elective here at the college this semester to better learn communication and cultural understanding of some of my potential future Hispanic clientele. And something else I learned in the leadership realm was that leaders are primarily, I would say, not born, and primarily are made. And so learning for myself this past summer learning from so many different people from different backgrounds, different leadership positions, whether it be within the college or outside of college. There's a lot of wealth of knowledge gained through that diversity of experience and background. And then I also gained a great respect working with Dr. Grooms, Lisa, and his whole team, and just what the challenges that there are facing a college administration on some of these challenging decisions they have to make every day, especially with the pandemic and so many other things that have happened this year. And just watching that has given me a great respect for that. And there's a lot of thought that goes into it. And then something else I learned this summer was being flexible. Things are always changing. I mean, especially this summer, we primarily worked 99% virtual. So just being able to be flexible with that and make the best that you can. And yeah, overall, really great experience. And I really appreciate your time today. Erica?
Thanks, Lyle. So before this internship, I really had zero leadership experience when it came to the realm of veterinary medicine. During my undergrad, I served as team captain during my junior and senior seasons on the Utah State women's volleyball team. So all of my leadership skills were really gained as a student athlete, which was an identity and role that I felt really comfortable in. And I've come to realize that the lessons I've learned on the volleyball court are really just as applicable during this internship and in vet med, and also other leadership roles that I've taken on this semester. I really put myself out of my comfort zone when running for different positions here in the college. Like I said, I never really had a leadership role here. So back in August, my class voted me to be one of 2 class representatives on the college's committee for diversity, equity, and inclusion. And before the school year, there was no student representation on the committee. And through this internship, we also helped change that. So we wanted to help the committee continue pushing the college in the right direction when it comes to diversity and inclusion, as well as help plan events through the college to invite anyone and everyone to attend, such as the first day of the semester kickoff event, to really bring more awareness, not only to the student body, but also to faculty and staff here at the college. I also applied to be a part of the executive team for a new club here at the college, which is called VOICE. And I'm now currently serving as the club's vice president. So VOICE stands for Veterinarians as One Inclusive Community of Empowerment. And it's a student-run organization that seeks to increase awareness, respect, and sensitivity to differences among all individuals and communities in the field of vet med. And our main goal is to really cultivate and foster a safe environment to discuss social justice issues as it pertains to the veterinary profession and the world around us today, really. And as our membership continues to grow, we even have some pre-veterinary club students from main campus joining us as well. So it's been a really fun experience getting involved that way. This internship opportunity really gave me the confidence to step outside my comfort zone and take on more roles in the college. And I hope to continue working in the realm of diversity and inclusion and really mentor others from similar backgrounds as me, and hopefully encourage more students from underrepresented backgrounds to pursue a career in vet med. We can't continue to be complacent and stagnant as a profession, and those from underrepresented backgrounds like myself really need to use and amplify their voices for change to happen. Beyond the leadership skills I gained this summer, I've also learned that implementing change has been, unfortunately, kind of a slow process, but it is even slower when we all stay within the status quo, just because, things have always been that way. And diversity and representation and inclusiveness are all extremely imperative, no matter what profession you're in. So I hope something that I took away, and I hope that something you all can take away from this, is that we all need to get comfortable with being uncomfortable, and for us to really begin to see real change and progress. So I wanted to thank Dean Grooms and Lisa and Lyle for an amazing summer. Thank you guys for having us here today, for your attention, and we will address any questions that you all have at this time.
And while we're waiting for questions, I'd just like to quickly summarize and just, again, thank everybody for joining us today. And this is just a great example of 2 young leaders in the veterinary profession and really in society in general, who have taken an opportunity this summer and really developed their skills around leadership and importantly, develop their skills around advancing diversity, equity, inclusion, both here within the College of Veterinary Medicine as well as within the profession and society in general. So just really proud of the effort that they put in this summer, and was really proud to watch them develop during this summer. So Caitlin or whoever else we have here, if you want to help us with any questions or kind of lead us through any questions or comments, we'd be glad to answer them at this time.
So I've already got a couple questions lined up, and it looks like one just came into the chat, but let's start with how have you distinguished between diversity and inclusion, and how are you measuring the improvement of diversity and inclusion?
So Eric or Larry, either one of you want to address that, or you want me to do that?
I mean, if you want to give a perspective from your point of view, and then, you know, we can give it from the student side, if you would like to start.
Sure. So I'll start. So how are we measuring it? So first of all, here within the College of Veterinary Medicine, we have a plan that has action items, and then every action items and things that we're trying to do to advance diversity, equity, and inclusion. On the diversity side, we're looking to increase the diversity of both our student population as well as our faculty and staff, and we keep track of that and measure it and report it out on our website. And so those are kind of numerical things, but the inclusivity part's a little bit harder, as you can imagine, to talk about. But what we continue to do is to make sure, not to talk about, but to measure, I should say, but what we really work on doing is making sure that we have events and activities and the things that we do intentionally, whether it's during faculty meetings or student meetings or leadership meetings, to really talk about creating that inclusive environment here within the College of Veterinary Medicine. So we intentionally try to do those things as we move forward. And that's speaking from a leadership point of view. Erica and Lyle, if you want to talk more from the student's point of view, that would be great.
Sure. So I do know that last semester, I mean, I've only been here for 2 years, but last semester there was a club here up on campus called Spectrum. There's still a club that's here at the college. But they actually had some sort of funding to help students get name tags. We wear name tags when we're, you know, in surgery lab, when we're, you know, any labs, or if we have students come and visit, you know, we want people to make sure they know who we are. And so they had funding to actually get name tags with students' pronouns on them. And so I think that's something that I've seen a lot more students take advantage of. We also voice, to kind of plug the club that I'm a part of, we also hosted Dr. Dean Whitaker. I think it was last fall, or maybe it was this past fall, but he gave a talk on the importance of pronouns, you know, really how it is attached to someone's identity, and how, you know, how you can really respect someone as an individual. And one thing that I've noticed is that a lot of my professors have been either, you know, in their email signatures, have been adding their pronouns on their, you know, their cover slides for their lecture of the day. They have their name, phone number, email, how to get in contact with them, and then their pronouns as well, which I think is a really awesome change to see here. We have a lot of students, staff, and faculty coming out to our events put on by the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Committee as well too. So I think it is very apparent that there are people in the college that are willing to learn and really willing to partake in these events that we're trying to put on and be more aware of as a college in general. I think one obstacle is obviously we're still in a pandemic, so everything that we're doing is still virtual. You know, we're not able to really do like a lot of in-person volunteer opportunities and things like that. But I definitely, as a student, have been seeing a positive change here at the college, and it's really great to see.
While we're waiting for the next question, I'll just mention. Go ahead, Lyle. I was talking over you.
Oh, I said I agree with both your points. I didn't have too much to add to that. Sorry.
I was just going to mention that Another cool initiative that was launched this semester, partially because of the pandemic and just an opportunity to try to continue elevating the bar on learning here within the College of Veterinary Medicine. So we launched our Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Committee launched the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Minute, which is a monthly, very short, to the point, kind of focused educational opportunity on some element related to diversity, equity, inclusion. So just a really kind of nice way to continue the learning within our community.
All right. The next question was, do you have any thoughts on why minoritized populations would have fewer animal hours than their white counterparts at the point of application?
So Erica, you want to address that first, or I can start? I think there's lots of theories around that. So
Yeah, sure, that's fine.
So just a couple things. Number one, in many cases, to be honest with you, it's not part of the culture of some minoritized communities to actually own animals or have animals. In many cases, folks from minoritized communities come from socioeconomically depressed areas where there just aren't a lot of animals or even opportunities to have exposure to animals in their local community. So I think these are a lot of the possibilities. Even just as simple as just not having the money to own a dog or a cat or an animal that would give them those exposure hours. So I think these are a lot of the big reasons that really, in many cases, reaches back to where they come from. It could be cultural. It could be just really, in many cases, their lower socioeconomic situations. Erica or Lyle, either one.
One thing that we looked at from the VMCAS application is, students who didn't have as many animal hours may have more working hours. Those are two different, aspects of the application where they ask, how many animal hours do you have? How many work hours? Like I remember I put work hours from working at a snow cone stand in high school. So, that being said, some students who may be working full-time during their undergrad, who may be possibly the sole provider or helping their parents provide for their family, they have to work part-time, full-time to help support their families, and they might not have that time to shadow a veterinarian or, those types of opportunities. So that's something that we also speculated. It isn't really plainly stated in the VMCAS application, but looking at the numbers, that's kind of what we extrapolated from that.
I'll just share a personal story. In my previous life at another job, I had the opportunity to mentor a young Black man from Detroit. That's my job was at Michigan State, and this young man, he told me very specifically that he wanted to be a veterinarian, but his opportunity in Detroit, Michigan to get exposure to animals was pretty much nothing. He couldn't afford, his family couldn't afford to have an animals. There was no place in Detroit really to get exposure to animals, whether it be companion animals or farm animals. And so his opportunities based on his environment really were just lacking, but he certainly still had that extreme desire to become a veterinarian. So it's just a matter of trying to create those opportunities or those situations where he could get those experiences.
Okay. Another question that we had come in was, as you develop relationships with those undergraduate programs, do you think you'll see universities that have vet programs undertake the same work you are doing?
So if I understand the question as, so one of our goals from this project was to identify schools, universities and colleges around the United States where applicants from underrepresented populations in veterinary medicine apply to Iowa State. And the goal then would be to work with, again, the advisors in those schools, the pre-veterinary clubs, animal science programs, whatever programs where the pre-vet students are coming from, and then develop relationships with those schools, help them understand what the applicants or what we are looking for when it comes to applicants to Iowa State University, so that they're clear about what the requirements are and what the what qualities we're really looking for, and then also from my perspective, help create either specific programs between the school or mentorship activities that can help those underrepresented students become stronger applicants, not only at Iowa State University, but also really at other colleges of veterinary medicine around the United States. So that would be our specific goals with identifying those kind of key partners where underrepresented students are applying to Iowa State from. Erica or Lyle, do you want to add to that, because you worked a lot with Deanna Gerber, who's our recruiter on this project?
Yeah, I guess I would add, I would guess that we might see some more schools follow suit in some of those, trying to develop some more of those connections. I'm not exactly sure. I mean, it'd be interesting to look at where some other schools are doing at that. I don't know if AAVMC has done any research on that. But I definitely think we could end up seeing some going forward.
Okay, it looks like Lyle put one in the chat, but another question we have is, what resources did you find most helpful as you learned more about and reflected on leadership, diversity, and inclusion?
Yeah, the couple links I just put in the chat were a couple of the articles or videos that we had watched as part of our leadership lunch and learns. So just kind of a couple of resources there. If anybody else has anything they want to add to it, but those are two of them that I had just pulling up my notes from this summer.
I thought it was really interesting, like Lyle was saying, that through our journal clubs, we would trade off every week who would present, what article, what podcast, what video. And it was really interesting to see the diversity between all of us, kind of what we brought to the table. So I think the most important thing that I learned is just listening to others, like backgrounds and perspectives on things like that. For me personally, when it comes to learning more about leadership and DEI, I really have been reading a lot more. There's a lot of really good books that I think people can definitely learn from, that I read a lot more over the summer when I had some more time. There are definitely some podcasts that I've been listening to as well, and really just putting myself out there. Again, the club that I am a part of, we had a discussion last week watching a short clip on Netflix that had to do with just the social injustice and the police system here in the United States. And then we also listened to and read The Hill We Climb from the inauguration. And had a discussion about that too. So I think just, finding resources, if you can join a club, if you can join some sort of group too, to have other people who are interested in discussing leadership and DEI more. I think I've learned definitely a lot more from other people than I have just, reading a book and things like that too. So not very specific answer, but that's just how I've learned more, so.
Lisa, we haven't given you a chance to answer any questions. You might want to just talk about, Lisa's a very important part of our team here. And one of the things that I know every summer that I've been part of this is I learn about leadership from our students and from the folks we interact with. And leadership is always a journey, no matter where you're at in your leadership journey. Lisa, you want to talk about your leadership journey?
Absolutely. Thank you. So I too have been learning along with the students, as they mentioned, with our journal clubs, because we do each take a turn, we lead that discussion. And I think we, with the ability to bounce ideas off each other, thoughts off each other, we've really opened up a lot of topics that maybe we would never even thought of. And especially when the four of us, we did do the Purdue certification program that we've mentioned here, along with the cohort of 39 people, the 4 of us did include that in our summer internship program where we met weekly and we went over a module together. So I think I learned so much more about that because the 4 of us did do those modules together. We did talk about that and in depth more than what I would have ever gotten doing the modules by myself. So I think that was very valuable for all of us to do.
Okay, I'm going to do one more question. I think we're going to be out of time, but one other question from was, has the college made any inroads with the community at large to initiate any kind of pipeline of students of color with maybe the Boys and Girls Club or Y Camps or anything like that?
So I guess I'll try to answer that. I would say in general, the answer is no. We've been, we certainly have been doing things with some of the local clubs during our Martin Luther King Day of Service with some of the local community partners. It is on our to-do list and certainly one of the things that we want to work with. Actually, we are part of a program with Purdue University that specifically does that, where you work with local community partners to educate young folks about, especially young folks from underrepresented populations, veterinary medicine, about science in general, but also about veterinary medicine. So it is one of the things on our to-do list, and we will be working that way. So thanks for that question.
Dean Grooms, it looks like someone put in the chat too that Deanna, who is our recruiter, has reached out many times, I guess, with the ISD for You promise.
Yeah,
well.
you bet. Thanks for that, Sherry Miller. Thank you.
All right. On behalf of the participants, I do want to thank you guys for presenting. It was a very informational session. I also want to remind all of the participants to please fill out the survey so that we can give them some feedback. If you have missed filling out the survey of any of the sessions you've attended, if you go to the left side of the Whova screen, there's a link that says surveys, and you should be able to go back to anything you have attended and you can fill out the surveys for any of those sessions. But please fill out those out so that we can give some feedback to the presenters. But thank you guys very much.